see a bridge? Then raise you 3 bridges. Bridge! I win!
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Triple Dummy, the Bridge podcast where we talk all things bridge. With me today, as usual, I've got Nick Jacob, and we've got special guest Max Hembest. Elena couldn't be with us today, unfortunately, and I'm Peter Hollands. Today we're going to be talking about some of the recent stuff that's been happening in Australia with the Spring Nationals that's just been happening. And we'll talk about some youth results, tips on sort of using double dummy analysis better, thoughts on how we can improve ViewGraph, ideas on how to stop being tempoed when you play against fast opponents, and then get to some emails. Seeing as we're starting with the Spring Nats, just want to say well done, Nick. He just won the Spring National Open teams. He managed to beat up some chumps in the final.
Yeah, they put up a fight for a little while, but, in face of the overwhelming class, it was understandable for them to fall over. So, send all your commiserations Pete Hollands' way. It was his team that had played. But, no, it was a final played in very good spirits, but the bridge was pretty shoddy, I think. Would you agree with that, Pete?
It wasn't the most high-class bridge. There were sort of mistakes going both sides, but yeah, I would say it was played in really good spirit. It was one of the my favourite events that I've lost, I'd say that. You don't often go away from an event going, afterwards you mope around a little bit, but everyone on my team was like, nah, whatever, that was a really good tournament, played a strong team. By the way, Nick's team was comprised of his dad, Tom Jacob, Nick, and Mike Ware from New Zealand, and then 2 Australians, Sataj Hans and Tony Nunn. So Tony has now gone back-to-back, winning 2 nationals, New Zealand and now the Spring Nats, and your dad's also gone back-to-back, winning the New Zealand pairs and now this. So
yeah, that's right. They're on a roll.
Yeah.
And Pete's team was himself and Justin Howard playing with Peter Gill and David Beecham with Helen Horrocks. And yeah, it was Pete narrowly missed out on doing the double as well. Juz had another second place for this year, poor fella. I was the sucky teammate in Melbourne, but so we did a lot better by splitting ourselves up this time, guaranteeing a first.
Better for you.
Yeah, better for me. That's right.
Batting for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really nice. The Horowitz team came out and we all went to Taj and Sophie's apartment and had some drinks and some Indian to, it's really nice, that sort of camaraderie. And yeah, as well, we had the second place getter, our guest Max Hen,
yep,
and Eventon, who did come into open pair. So congrats on that, buddy.
Nick cut out a bit but he's just said Max came second in the Dick Cummings, which is Swiss pairs that happened at the same time as the final there, and Max managed to come in second, just behind Ron Klinger and Avi Konetka.
It was not just behind, we were a long way behind. They had quite the margin, so no one was really going to catch them by the end of the day. So they were definitely the best performing pair on the field, but coming in second is always nice.
Not always nice.
Oh yeah.
But, was it close between you and third, or what was the margin?
Second through about 4th and 5th were all really tightly packed. Only a couple they were converting match points to VPs, so there were only a couple of VPs in it between everybody up the top end of the field, and we were just lucky that we were just at the top at the end of the event.
Yeah.
A couple of rounds earlier and a couple of rounds later, we might not have been there. So we finished pretty strong. So we were definitely happy with the way we played for the most part. But always room for improvement, I guess.
And this was your first outing with partner Adam Edgerton?
Yeah, so this is the first event Adam and I ever played together. So just getting started, really. It's a good sign, doing well in an event, just starting off, when you can have a few misunderstandings, and we did have a couple of misunderstandings. Obviously, it's impossible to avoid them, even experienced partnerships.
What were some of your misunderstandings?
So it was just like little things about how strong certain bids were, and different ways of showing strong hands as opposed to weak hands. Where I was trying to show a weak hand sometimes, and he thought I had a strong hand, and I was like, no, and he's like, no, we're going all the way. And I'm like that. So stuff like that.
Any catastrophic disasters from that sort of stuff that you remember?
No, I think most of the contracts we got to had some variety of play. Sometimes not a lot. They need about 3 or 4 finesses occasionally, but sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Needing 3 or 4 finesses. Yeah. How was it playing with Adam? He's sort of known for being a bit slow.
He did slow at the time. Actually, he wasn't too bad. We didn't miss any boards. We didn't have any slow play warnings even. So we got all our boards finished on time, which is good. He's definitely could be quicker at times, but he thinks things through very thoroughly. So it's probably a good thing. So rather than rushing through, he just takes his time, make sure he gets it right.
I know you like to take your time at some stages. Did you have to slow down, speed up, knowing that you're playing with someone who's usually a bit slower?
Not so much, no. There are a few hands when I knew we were under time pressure, and I just claimed really quickly at trick 1 when I just had 10 tricks, and almost, I got some very, very remote chances of extras, but practically I needed a pretty serious miss defense to get an extra trick. And you just sort of claim those hands at trick 1, and you just move on to the next board. And for the most part, whenever Adam's thinking, I tend to try and get most of my thinking done as well at the same time. So he's thinking about something, I can obviously be thinking about something else to do with the hand, and making sure that after he's finished sorting out, filtering all the information on his side, that by the time he plays a card, I'm pretty confident about what's going on and the different scenarios I'm playing for and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's very important.
So yeah, and at the end of the day, it's a partnership game as well. So you're only really entitled to 50% of the time on the clock, I guess. So if you and your partner aren't using the time as a team productively, then obviously you're going to run into issues. But I felt like we did a pretty good job, and I could see that I knew when I was thinking as well. He was obviously getting a lot of his thinking done. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have hit it off pretty well. It's always good getting that chemistry early on in a partnership. I feel, I don't know how much you've experienced at Pete when you've been playing with Jazz for about 50 million years, but I know that whenever I've played with a new partner, with whom I'm intending to, build towards international experience, we've always started off really strongly. We've always, had an event or two when we were just in the very green stages of a partnership, and it's gone well, been on the same wavelength. When we've disagreed about things, we can actually have an unbiased and fair two-way conversation about it, and all those things bode very well for a partnership, I feel.
Yeah.
And another thing is, when you're starting off in a new partnership, you tend to, I'll say, take care of your partner a bit more. So sometimes there's a choice of 2 bids, and the partner will has a chance of misinterpreting one of your bids. And so you tend to, even though it might be a better bid, say 5 or 10% of the time, you tend to steer clear of it just to avoid a partnership misunderstanding. And then, at the end of the session, you might say, oh, how would you have taken these bids in this scenario here as well? And it's just like when you've been playing together for a long time, I feel like you just assume the partner's on the same wavelength as you, and they'll be able to interpret any bid. They should be able to interpret almost any bid that you make correctly, provided your thinking's correct. So when you're starting a new partnership, there's a lot of taking care of your partner as well that maybe some more developed partnerships lose.
Yeah.
Yep, very true.
Talking about taking care of your partner, you're on a team of 5 there, Nick, and you played with, 3 of the other 4 members?
Yeah, that's right.
How,
I was actually going, yeah.
How did it feel like? How much care were you taking when you're changing up and playing with a different partner basically every match?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was playing three different styles. I mean, we were all playing stronger, well, variations of stronger Trump, 5K majors, but with Tony, I was playing transfers over a short club, very aggressive style. With Sataj, we were playing very little system, so no transfers. And with Dad, he doesn't play transfers, but he plays a very specialised system. It's not really two of one style. It's kind of it's kind of different to any common natural styles in play at the moment. And for me, it's not such a big problem. I can kind of I can put things together based on who I'm playing with and what their tendencies are. I mean, actually, we did have some lineup difficulties in that my dad Tom didn't get to have a break through the tournament. We wanted Michael to have a game with Sataj so that they could be, a partnership that we could use. But also, I played a bit with Michael in the past as well. So
Yeah.
we were at one point considering me playing with four different partners. And that sort of thing was it?
No, you go, don't worry.
That's all right. Yeah, I was going to say that sort of thing doesn't bother me really. I made a couple. Well, I didn't really make too many systemic errors. I made a couple of style errors. So on one hand, I had Ace King to five spades and out effectively, and it went. No one was vulnerable, and it went pass and I opened a spade, and I feel like this would have been pretty automatic playing with any of my potential partners on my team except for Dad. He's the only one who doesn't really mess around in that sort of position. So we then had a kind of warped auction where it went double and it left three spades preempted from Dad, four hearts on the right, pass from me, pass double from him. And I was thinking, what have you done to me? How could you possibly double four hearts opposite a non-vulnerable third in hand, one level opening, after having made a preemptive raise? And I was, and it was, so the auction was insane. But then I'd compound, because I was so, perplexed by the auction, I convinced myself to do something that wasn't normal, and I didn't lead a top spade, which was catastrophic. The spades were 2-2, and Dad had the ace queen of hearts sitting over the king, and I was just like, how did this all go so horribly wrong? I mean, we should have got our plus 50, and then I should have given myself 30 seconds to get over the shock of, the preemptive raise doubling this thing. And then I should have just led a top spades and got 100 instead. So, I made a couple of those style errors, but nothing really systemic, I don't think.
I think you've done well on the hand. In all honesty, I was playing with a partner who wasn't expecting me to have a light third set opening, and then made a preemptive raise, and then proceeded to double the opponents in a game contract. And I think I'm looking at probably one defensive trick as opposed to the 12 high card points to the partner's opening. I would have been taking the spade sacrifice and just hoping it went for less than 790, which the opponents are making in their double four hearts.
Yeah. That's a very reasonable point. I did consider that as well, but then I figured I was balanced hand opposite what sounds like a balanced with four-hour raise, and I was like, we're going to get rewarded in four spades. We're going to get absolutely massacred. So I figured, well, whatever, I'll take mine. They're not vulnerable, they can have their 590 or 690 or whatever it is. But, it was unfortunate how it all panned out, but it was all avoidable. Could have been avoided without a crazy double, and it could have been avoided without a crazy lead, and it's just anyway. Those sorts of stylistic things are, in my opinion, more important when you're playing with different partners, especially ones you don't play with very often or haven't played with at all. Just bearing in mind what they're expecting you, what what sort of activity they're expecting from you in the auction, what sort of carding what the emphasis is on. And actually, all the guys made it very easy. It was very basic carding, reverse attitude with reverse count sprinkled in afterwards, and kind of the standard expert practices, like when you lead something, dummy goes down with singleton, you give suit preference, and all these little things. Like, it's just everyone was on the same page there, which made it much easier, because defense is where things can go really horribly wrong with a new partner.
So you didn't have any systemic differences, like changing keycard from 0-3 to 1-4 or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I had that as well. Your dad plays 0-3 and Sakashi only play 1-4, so yeah, it was kind of, these little things are just kind of silly, but
do you know what the solution is, Nick? You just don't use keycard, you just bid slam when you play.
Exactly. That was my thing. I don't think I've had more slam options where neither of us used keycard for a long time. It was really good. Sometimes we'd go Q bidding off at the 5 level, and I'm thinking, this is a really weird option. We'd still get to an okay slam. I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah, because in the round robin, I played against the Brown team, and I played against Terry, who had to swap between partners that were both doing. One was doing 1 on 14:30, the other was doing 0-3-1-4. And his partner bid keycard, and he went into a tank for about 5 minutes before responding, because he completely forgot which one did the other. It was like, oh my god. But he got it right. But it's just funny, like, issues like that can be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was one option that Sataj faced, playing with Tony, and they'd had a Q bidding auction. Sataj had Q bid 4 clubs, and then Tony had bid 4 spades. I'm not sure if he'd done it as a Q bid or as a sign off. I think it was as a Q bid. And then Sataj keycarded with 4 no trump. But the answer he received from Tony made no sense whatsoever. Tony said that he had 2 key cards, and Sataj was missing the ace of diamonds and another key card. And he was like, well, hang on a sec. How can Tony have 2 key cards if he doesn't have the ace of diamonds? I mean, surely he would have. If he had the ace of diamonds, he would have cubed 4 diamonds. So he fought for a long time and decided that the odds of Tony not cubing were so infinitesimal compared to the odds of Tony just not counting his key cards that he played them to have given him the wrong key card response. Correct? Well,
yeah, that was actually against me. So
yeah.
I was like, what happened?
Yeah. How did he go, by the way? Did Sataj get it right?
Yeah.
Tony miscounted his key cards?
Yeah, Tony couldn't count to 2.
Yeah, that's good. That is good.
Also, currently in the Spring Nationals is the women's and seniors are on at the moment. What's happening there, Nick?
So the seniors, the Lawrence team, on the strength of their last quarter, they've won by about 40 imps or so. So congratulations to them. That's Gabba Lawrence and Stephen Burgess, Rodden Klinger, who did the double with the Dick Cummins, and playing with Bill Hoey, and they beat the Neil team, which looks like some amalgamation of the Neil team from the Spring Nationals, as well as a few mates coming in.
Yep.
It was Bruce Neal, Richard Jedrzejowski, Peter Buchan, Henry Christie, Paul Wyatt, and Terry Brown. So, yeah, it was a good effort to the Lawrence. Good effort by the Lawrence guys.
Yep. That's a good result. What's happening in the women's?
The women's, let's have a look. The Smart team is, wow, it's all very close. I think is it all finished?
All finished, yeah.
All finished. So the Smart team.
Good
Just
name.
narrowly lost to the Travis team, despite a big fourth quarter comeback. So congratulations to Barbara Travis, Candice Ginsberg, Sue Lusk, Margaret Burke, Marianne Bukalil. Sorry, Marianne. I have no idea how to say your last name. And Jodie Tutty. And a good effort by Di Smart, Felicity Beale, Marina Kaplan, and Nevena Drurovic. So a good final by the looks of it.
Yeah. So that all just wrapped up today. So yeah, well done to both of them. Other things that happened in the Spring Nats were some good youth results. So not only Max, who came second in the Dick Cummings with a youth partner, but a youth team made the semi-finals, which you had the luxury of playing against, Nick.
That's right. The Braun team, which is Daniel Braun, Nabil Edgerton, Jamie Williams and Stevie Thompson, or vice versa.
Jamie Thompson and Stephen Williams. Yeah.
Thompson and Stevie Williams. They did really well. They completely smashed their way into the semi-finals by 0.01 of a VP over the Orange team.
Every inch matters.
Yeah, that's right. And so we played them in the semi-final. They had a pretty tough semi-final. Nabil and Braun had a great qualifying, particularly the last day. They were very strong. But
Nabil and Braun, sorry to interrupt. Nabil and Braun, I believe they ended up seconds on the datums in the qualifying of the Spring Nationals. So a very strong performance by them as well. So they were definitely in form for most of the event. So very, very well played by them.
That's right. So it's good seeing the young Australian pairs putting up a good show. I mean, there's going to be a bit of competition for the team next year, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Could be close, you know.
Yeah, wow, you never know. I mean, you won't want it to be close. You want to gallop it.
As long as it's close, as long as I don't miss out by a little bit, I'll be okay. As long as I make it in, that's all that matters.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd recommend I know we're still a long way off, but yeah, come the middle of January next year, there's going to be a very hard fought trials, I think.
Yeah. There's about 5 or 6 pairs that, if any of them made it, I wouldn't be surprised. Usually throughout the past, there's been 4 pairs that you might be picking out of. A couple that are clear, and then a couple that are pretty close. But 6, I don't think I've ever had a year where I could list 6 names and not be surprised if any of them actually made it. 6 pairs, I mean.
Absolutely. Who else? There's obviously Max and Adam, Nabil and Braun, Jamie and Stevie, Elena Moskowski, our esteemed panelist, who's not here, clearly practicing, and Lauren Travis. And who are the other pairs in contention?
There's Renee Cooper and Matt Smith.
Yep, that's right.
There's Shane Harrison, Reese Cooper. I don't know if they're playing together or not, but there are 2 other people floating around that could definitely make it.
Yep.
And I'm sure I'm missing someone else.
Jamie Thompson and Stephen Wood.
Yep. So that's a good pool of people. Absolutely.
One of the good things from their current result that I found out was that for 3 of the team, Daniel Braun, Stephen Williams, and Jamie Thompson. I thought I did the dyslexic thing of you and swapping their names again. That was their first ever semi-finals of a national. So, I'm sure it won't be the last, but it's good to see, them all coming through and getting some good youth results rather than the same old people doing it.
Absolutely, and you need that experience playing in knockouts as well. It's a completely different game, and for a lot of the guys, the event really only starts in the knockouts. I mean, you think of the NOT this year, which was won by the Braithwaite team, and Mikey Ware flew in for the last day of qualifying. Just assuming that they would get through, and they basically played throughout during the knockouts. So it's a different world playing in the knockouts. I haven't had much experience in it. Max, you played a knockout. It was just one match knockout, wasn't it? The final and the A knot, which you guys won.
Yeah, and in Croatia as well, we had a few knockouts.
Croatia as well.
And the G knot, our favourite event. It's just knockouts from the start.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a real different mentality playing knockouts as well. So if you're playing just imps, the goal is just to beat teams. Just like take a don't bid like an aggressive slam and try and like develop an early lead or something in like a 9-board match or something. You just want to bid solid contracts and make sure you make your contracts and beat teams by a little bit, just grind them out throughout the thing, and at the same time you'll have some big wins and you'll have some small losses and stuff, and it doesn't really matter so much. But in a knockout, or like at the end of the day, you've got so many more boards to work with that there's definitely some tactics that come into it. So like if you're leading with, say, one stanza to go, say 14 boards, the way the opponents could be playing could be very different to the way that you're playing. So like if your opponents are down by like 40 or 50 imps, it's quite hard to pick that up in like a 12 or 14 board segment. So they could be taking some slightly different actions, and then you have to try and account for this as well. What you do, it's a very different vibe. So I prefer it as well. It's much more, I'm going to say, pure form of the game. Although I'm not sure if that's the correct word.
It does do some interesting things, such as like what happened in the final segment of your semi-final, where you're playing the youth team and they were down about 70 or so imps going into the last 14 boards.
Yeah.
Now, what should your strategy be when you're down 70 imps and you need to pick it up? So how much do you play differently? So I think it's pretty pure, but then if there's a big spot where people just go in swinging, trying to get all these imps back and things like that, some strange stuff can happen. And
yeah, absolutely.
Is it really a bridge?
It's actually something that it's good to have experience at, maybe having a swing, because like unfortunately when you enter events you don't always get to like the final stanza. You're not always winning when it comes to the final stanza. So sometimes you are actually down by 70s quite a lot, but even like 40 or 50, and you might need to take some swinging actions in that set of boards as well. And it's a lot of people, like, if you haven't had experience doing it before, it's a very different tactic to playing just a regular solid bridge. So, and you need to know the correct positions and when it is safe and it isn't safe to take these actions, because like all of a sudden you don't want to bid to like a ridiculous game contract or something and then take like a very anti-percentage line, and all you have to do is make the contracts to win the imps on the board. And it's not about just it's not about like making sure you can win the most number of imps on every board. It's you want to make sure the imps keep ticking over. Like you want imps to be going in both directions. Well, hopefully in your direction more, but if imps are going in both directions, there's a good chance that a lot of them can land on your side, which is what you want.
Yeah, and it also gives you experience as well with a lead. I know there was an Australian trials a couple of years back. I think one of the mini trials at Pettigill has lost by one imp. It was Ishmael's team, and they were down by bucket loads going into the last set. I don't know how it was. It was about 70 or 80 or something like that. And they didn't really come out swinging, but the other team came out really, really cold. Like they weren't overcalling vulnerable because they didn't want to get doubled at the one level and go for 800 or 1100. And so Ishmael's team got all these swings coming in just from doing standard aggressive actions where the other table had tightened up completely and didn't want to give the opportunities for penalties, and suddenly you've got several vulnerable games in, and it almost overturned a huge deficit.
Yeah. So if you're leading, you generally want to play the same strategy because that's what's been winning you the imps anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, you shouldn't really, if you're leading, keep your bidding the same and your decisions. You're obviously making good decisions. That's probably a reason that you're leading, as opposed to a bad position like the other teams. Just stick with what's going well for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, well we might move on to the next one, which is some tips on how how do you reckon you should best use the double dummy analysis? So you finish a session of bridge, you get a hand record, and you see what results can be made. Any tips on actually using that to actually get better at bridge?
All right, I'll give it a hoon. So if a lot of people, they pick up the hand record and then they'll go straight to a few interesting hands that they had, and then they say, "Oh, we could have made that game contract, or we could have beaten that 3-no trumps or something." And although technically everyone can see all the cards, you can do these things, it doesn't mean that's what should happen at the table. So the double dummy analysis is just there to provide like a guide as to not what a reasonable result on the board is. It's just what the best possible result on the board could be, is if everyone can see all the cards. And really, it's if you're using a program like Gib or something, which is on ViewGraph and that's on BBO, you can go through and you can see at different times what cards you need to play in order to beat a contract. And sometimes you might be on lead with like Queen empty fifth in a suit, and the only lead to beat the contract will be the Queen. And no experts really, or no advanced players ever really going to lead their Queen just out of the blue to beat this contract. Everyone's just going to lead low from the suit, which is normal action. And it's about realizing when you're making your analysis of the boards, what you think should happen at each turn. So like you might look at somebody's hand and they could be sitting there with ace king fifth in a suit on lead against 3-no trumps. That suit's probably the suit you want to lead. And so you can say, okay, well if that person's going to say the suit spades, if that person's going to lead a spade, what's going to happen next? So I'm like, oh, okay, we'll declare or win it in their hand, and they're going to play on the club suit or something to try and develop their tricks. And it's like, even though you've got ace king fifth in a suit, your partner might have a better suit, but there's no way for you to know that before like you've got a signal from your partner, and normally not before you get a lead from dummy, or like not a lead from dummy, you got to look at dummy. And so when you're using double dummy software or like double dummy, you need to be mindful that although it says you can do certain things, it's not always true. And the best way to use it is just to really look at the hand, and you can actually improve your play a lot by figuring out a way of how you can beat these contracts and what you needed to do to beat them. So like when it says you needed to beat 3-no trumps or something, like figure out a way that where it doesn't look possible to beat 3-no trumps, figure out a way that it can happen. And just the process of mentally going through and figuring it out will really help a lot with your analysis skills during the hand as well. So that's probably the best use of them, is to just improve like analysis skills as opposed to looking about what should happen on a board and what can happen on a board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well one of the more interesting aspects of the play that you can see when you're doing double dummy analysis is the timing involved, especially on defense. You know, the timing of when you play trumps to stop ruffs, the timing of when do you hold up a suit, or do you win it and switch, or do you steal a trick in one suit and then switch to another suit. All these things are quite subtle, and you might pose problems for you might find it hard to pose problems for declarer on defense without really appreciating the difference in timing. Am I setting up my suit, or am I setting up my partner's suit? Who's got the entries? How do we manage our entries on defense? All these things are very useful to look at. Well, the thing is, looking at double dummy doesn't actually tell you about these things, but when you notice that you can beat a contract, and it doesn't seem, you can't see a clear-cut way, there are usually two variations, and I think, you get the esoteric things where you do have to lead your queen and slam out an unsupported jack or something, and do something a little quirky to squeeze a dummy or whatever, and you're like, okay, that's cool, whatever. I probably won't do that at the table. The second is more practical, and that's managing defensive entries, managing setting up the right long suit, or actually going completely passive as well, and letting declarer do all the work that he needs to. So yeah, it can be quite useful looking at timing, and obviously the same applies for declarer play as well. A lot of the times, when you can make a contract and you didn't feel like it at the time. You didn't feel as though you could make it, and you weren't on a guess, or you weren't, playing for card spins in specific areas. It can be nice to just confirm, whether you had got the timing right in your head, if you or if you maybe overlooked something like ducking an early round of trumps as declarer that you didn't need to, or setting up your side suit by ducking the first round, like ace king to 6 opposite a singleton or something like that, which sound esoteric, but they're all using very strong bridge principles.
Yeah.
Avoiding overruffs, avoiding losing control, keeping trumps and dummy to guard against roughs, and all these sorts of things. So, yeah, I think it's very useful, but it's very tricky at the same time. I can't even. Can you guys remember what it was like, starting out in the game and not really knowing what you could do with the cards?
I still don't.
No, I know. Yeah, we can get completely stumped by hands, not just at the table, but afterwards looking at it. I'm like, there was one hand I was discussing with Pete and Juz, and we were talking about the best way to defend the Serena trump, and they were like, oh, you should play a diamond because you force declarer to cash the diamonds and squeeze his hand. And I'm like, oh, but shouldn't you play a club because that cuts declarer off from the hand? Like, we've got all these kind of ideas running around, and and they were quite right. It was more practical to cut off the to force the dummy to cash winners and squeeze declarer's hand, even though it didn't actually work on the layout.
Yeah.
So it's very tricky to be unbiased in those situations.
Just elaborating on one of your points that you made a bit earlier, Nick, is making declarer guess, and that's like it's a big part of the game. Or as a declarer, making the opponent's guess, where sometimes you can figure out what you're like 90, what you really think the lay of the cards are, and you can figure out that sometimes there's no way that you can make your contract as declarer. But at the same time, you need to realize that both defenders might not be able to, don't know the exact layout of the cards either, in which case you need to give a losing option. So, like, although you technically will never be able to make your contract, and you can figure that out sometimes as declarer, double dummy, what you need to be able to do is you need to give your opponents room to make mistakes. Yeah, and that's a really good thing to think about as well when you're playing the hand. Is even if you're not going to make, the defenders don't necessarily know that you're not going to make either. They might be thinking, oh, well, what if you've got that jack instead of like your right-hand opponent having a jack, or like just a small card in the suit that makes a big difference. And by letting your opponents, by then putting one of them on lead who doesn't have the full information about their hand, it can make them guess, and that everyone's human, and you make mistakes, you can't help it.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, sorry, that would be over tricks. I'll let you get back to it.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. It's a good tangent because it opens up different strategies that you can use as declarer once you start to think about it. And really, what helped me a lot was thinking about how confused I often am on defence, and thinking, what are the conditions in which this confusion exists, and then trying to replicate those as declarer. One really good one is if you're in a no-play Serena trump, and everyone gets to no-play Serena trumps all the time.
Yeah.
It's something that always happens. And let's say they lead a suit that you're not particularly worried about. You're happy for. You might not necessarily want them to return it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But there's another suit that you don't want them to play, and there's there are two other suits that you might want to attack. And no line maybe no line offers that great hope.
Yeah.
But if you work on a suit that you haven't denied, in which dummy has evident strength, then you're much more likely to get the switch that you want, or to avoid the switch that you don't want. Imagine that the defence are looking at 3 low spades and 3 low hearts, and you haven't had that revealing an auction passes, but 1-3-0, and they've led. Surprisingly, they've led a diamond, and that's into your I don't know, say
You've
something
got
I'm
diamonds.
worried, like Ace King Jack or something, and it looks like they've led from a 5 or 6 card suit, which they'd have to do to screen leading from a major, and you're thinking to yourself, well, great, you know, in this hopeless Serena Trump, they probably should have led a major and then they would have no problem, but instead of working on either of the majors, even if I might have, you know, even if we might have a 5-3 half and I've got 5 hearts in my hand, I might just play on clubs because that's where dummy's strength is, and steal a trick in clubs, force them to make a guess between the majors or returning a diamond, and you know, just that difference in timing might mean the difference between going on, you know, between going off in a normal failing contract or winning a surprise 12 ups on the board, because you make this, you know, this contract that you force the opponents to make a guess in.
So you're talking about maximising the use of the hidden hand. Something lots of people don't think about is that while as declarer you can see 2 hands, but the defenders can only see the dummy. So it's tricky, but you can sometimes put yourself in their view and think, if I put them in without revealing anything about my hand which they can't see, they're more likely to make mistakes. So capitalising on the fact that they can't actually see your hand and they don't know the same information you know is a really tricky but very useful skill to learn.
I had a hand exactly like this in the pairs of the Dick Cummings in Sydney, where in the auction I'd bid to a 5 heart contract, and along the way I'd shown diamonds as well. The opponents had bid and agreed spades, and I've got, like, in my closed hand I had a whole heap of diamond losers that I had to get rid of, and then if I can establish dummies clubs I can discard them all. However, if the opponents ever switch to a diamond at any stage, or if the first time they get in they switch to a diamond, I'm just dead in the water, or pretty much dead in the water. So all I did was, like, even before tackling trumps, I decided to play on clubs straight away. The theory being is that if I play trumps, both opponents are going to have time to signal what suit they do and don't like. And this guy on my left here, or this guy on my right here, is going to be able to say, hey, partner, play a diamond. Like, I really want you to play a diamond. And it's like, even though technically the best line would be to, I suppose, draw trumps first, because that way I can never suffer a rough. I can afford to. By doing it, you give the opponent more information about their hands as well as your hand. And so just by playing a club straight away, as it happens, like, I got home in my contract because there was a defensive error. That wasn't necessarily an error. Their partner wasn't able to signal the fact that they needed a diamond played at this certain time. And this guy was stuck at a guess as to whether he just continues, be passive and wait for his tricks, or what he does. So it's definitely a big part of the game.
Yep, absolutely.
Getting back to double dummy analysis, my general thoughts on how to improve the use of it. Usually when you finish a session, there's probably too much to look through every hand and work out why. But if you want to start doing that, I'd focus on the hands where either double dummy made more tricks than you, or you let something through that shouldn't have. So something where there's a trick differential. Don't just go, oh, I got this one right, or I got this one wrong. Actually sit down and work out why double dummy they can make it more. More often than not, it's just like on a lead, on a guess, or something like that. But working out why those sorts of things can happen can make you then realize for the other hands that you just go, okay, I bid game, I made, okay, that's fine, whatever. Because then when you practice this skill, it becomes easier on using it on more hands. And then you'll be able to do it on all the ones and go, well, I bid this game and made it, but I really shouldn't, because I wouldn't usually be guessing this, but this other thing happened, or things like that.
One of the things I found really useful when using the double dummy was not so much going through and looking at the hands I played, but just looking at hand records out of interest, is going through and finding hands where, say, the East player can make more tricks on a given hand than the West player, and figuring out why that is and what lead needs to be made in order to hold the contract to the fewest number of tricks. And it really helped me a lot with understanding some timing issues, which could come about in, say, squeezes and end plays and end positions later on. And it's definitely a good way to improve, and just really sitting down and trying to figure out. Some of them are pretty obvious, where one side can lead from a king and one side can't. But some of them are far from obvious, and sitting down and figuring out why East makes more tricks or something is definitely, I found, very helpful as well.
Yeah. I know that's, you know, if you're sitting around in a bar discussing some hands with some people, that's often a common thing of like, why the hell does this side make more tricks? And it's not abundantly clear, and then like 5 experts look at it for a few minutes and then might be able to work it out sometimes, but it's definitely a good skill and something that can be quite enjoyable to try and work out. We'll move on to the next topic, which was what are your thoughts on how you can improve ViewGraph? Like, Max, I know you personally don't really enjoy watching ViewGraph that much. What would make it more interesting for you?
One of the main reasons I don't like watching ViewGraph is I don't like watching my teammates play. So if my teammates are ever on ViewGraph, I never watch the match. I don't like doing it. I've definitely been at score ups where like I've come back to a score up and it's been obvious that my teammates have watched us play on ViewGraph and they know the score of the match before we've even scored up. Then I'm literally smiling like, oh, they're really happy about it, they're looking really sad and disappointed in you. And I personally, like when I'm walking over to the team, like across the lobby of like a hotel, when my teammates look really sad at me, like I feel really bad. Like I've gone in there, I've done the best I can, and all of a sudden everyone knows the score of the match before I get to the score up. Personally, I get a bad feeling from that, and I don't like it, so I don't want to do it to my teammates. And at the same time, I also believe like scoring up should be a thing you do with your team. So at the end of the match, everyone should sit together and figure out the imps and whatnot together. And I just think it creates a really nice team vibe. And so that's one of the reasons I don't like watching ViewGraph as well. And sometimes when you watch ViewGraph, it can be a bit painful to watch your teammates go off in certain contracts or let contracts make, and it can definitely make me a bit edgy. So I try to avoid that.
What about when your team's not part of it?
When my team's not part of it, I don't mind watching ViewGraph, but I like to be able to enjoy the feel of the table as well. I feel like a lot of decisions are sometimes, there's obviously technical information that you can glean from watching people play contracts. However, I feel like a lot of decisions are sometimes made at the table, like whether one person hesitates a little bit, or like why is this person over here thinking as opposed to this person, if somebody's thinking they've got a problem. And like I feel like a lot of experts take advantage of this information, but that information's only at the table. So the ViewGraph only gives you a technical aspect of what's happening. So that's why I prefer to get the whole problem as opposed to just only, say, half of the problem, which you get just from watching what cards are played and what bids were made.
So what would improve it for you?
Well, obviously, Trian Chira has been doing a lot of webcam stuff. I enjoy watching when I can see what's happening at the table and watch the hand going at the same time. I quite enjoy that. You get to see people thinking. Sometimes the players just stop and take a break for 5 minutes, and you as the watcher of ViewGraph don't really know what's going on. And I find that quite annoying when nothing's happening on your screen for 5 minutes or something. Like I'm not saying I'm not happy to wait around for 5 minutes or something. I'm happy, it's a perfect time for you to go get a coffee or something and come back. But yeah, so that's one of the things I really think can be improved on it. And one of the things I really like that's happening these days is the webcams, and you can actually see players live at the table.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Nick?
I used to watch ViewGraph a lot when I was just coming into the game. I found it fascinating. Seeing the different styles that people employed, and seeing what people did in different situations. When you try and look at it from a single dummy point of view, so you're looking at it from just their hand rather than double dummy. I think that makes a big difference as well, because when you see a double dummy, it's not quite as interesting. You know how things should pattern out, and how generally how it will, not how it should pan out, but what the best thing is for the side that you're going for, or for both sides, or whoever. And I think that, yeah.
Sorry, you can actually do that. So if you go to ViewGraph and you're watching someone, you can say Kibitz North, and you can just see the North cards, and you can only see, if East is dummy, you can see East is dummy when dummy comes down. So you can actually choose to Kibitz one player and only see their cards, and as they're bidding and playing their cards, you can be deciding what you are doing at the same time. without seeing everyone else's, which is a really good function that BBO has. I'm not sure if it's recently introduced, but I only recently found out about. So it's definitely a good function to muck around with the options. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's a good point. It is a great feature. The only problem I have, this segues into a much greater problem, which is that most top level bridge, certainly American Nationals or World Championships, especially in the knockout rounds, are very, very slow. So you might just be sitting through a hand that we can all see is about 1 over trick, and it takes 10 minutes to play it out for them to play it out. And you actually think, I understand that, that you need a lot of time. You don't know, especially because you don't know when you're actually going to have a big problem. No one tells you that this is going to be a really significant position. You have to treat every position as though it were very significant. But, when you watch some guys who are incredibly slow, they may be very good players, but for me, it just takes away from the viewing experience. The other thing that I think is really important but often neglected is the caliber of commentary, and not just. I don't mean in terms of truly. Are the commentators true experts, or are they advanced, or what skill level they are? I mean, actually, how interesting are they to listen to? And unfortunately, most of the guys who do, especially audio commentary, but also some written commentary on BBO, are just not that entertaining. They get stuck on little segues, like whether it's better to play this is 7 to 10 points or 8 to 11 points, and you actually feel like you need a play-by-play caster almost, a term that for us gamers is very common. It's just the same as for sportscasters. You need to have a guy who's good at analysis, the expert who will get all these double dummy positions right, and who doesn't need to use double dummy solver to get these things. He has a good understanding of the game. But you also need a play-by-play guy to be, talking about the state of the match and to ask questions that might prompt some good discussion. I mean, you guys both watch cricket, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cricket, right? Not much happens a lot of the time, especially a test match. It's really slow, but if you have good commentators, it makes a huge difference. We can all of us love going to, to sit on the banks at a test cricket match with a radio, listening to the radio cricket commentators, because we all know that radio cricket commentators are just infinitely superior to the televised commentators.
Yeah.
And it's because
I like watching cricket on TV with the sound muted, and when they turn the radio on and listen to them.
Yep.
It's a much better experience.
Absolutely. I know it's just a very common thing that we've all learned to do. And, I kind of feel like that we need the same approach in bridge. Bridge isn't that exciting. Bridge isn't going to draw, thousands of people to watch the World Championships, like the people who turn up for the World Series of Poker. We're not going to have it on ESPN because it's too tricky to understand. It is a slow-paced game. It's not high stakes. I mean, there are high stakes, in behind the scenes, but it's not like you win this and you win $1 million or something and you come second and you get nothing. It's very different. It's not the typical entertainment package that you get from a sport or a game. So the commentators have to be much, much better at generating atmosphere, at talking not just about the game, but about little side events as well, and bringing up stories. Good storytellers are amazing viewgraph commentators.
Yeah.
If you get someone like Ishmael Del Monte to commentate on viewgraph, I mean, seriously, it's like I'm just trying to think of it. I mean, you guys probably won't know Jeremy Coney. He's a fantastic New Zealand commentator, ex-player. But you compare listening to listening to him versus someone like Tony Gregg, who you can't listen to for 30 seconds before you want to gouge your. I don't know how you can gouge your ears out, but I'm sure it's possible. So you just need that. So you need people, and it's tricky because it's not. Well, I don't really know why. I don't know why it's not a desired thing, right? I would love, if I get knocked out of a tournament and I have nothing to do, I would love to host a Viewgraph theatre and just talk shit. It's so fun, and and you can have such a good time. You can involve the audience. You can banter with your friends. It's beautiful. But when I tried that on BBO, when I was commenting on Max's knockout matches in Croatia, we had a great time, and I think some of the commentary was pretty funny.
I enjoy discussing a lead problem.
Yeah.
You're defending 6 clubs doubled.
And you have an ace. What do you leave? Perhaps,
you've got an ace. You've also got a king queen. What's your choice? This will swing the semi-final of the World Youth.
Yeah.
What did you choose to lead, Max?
It's not just a king queen you've got. You've got to give it in the whole entirety. But you've got king queen jack 10 9 in a suit. Like that is a real solid suit. Or you're just an ace empty third in another.
Short story, Max managed to find the wrong lead because his partner had king queen in the other suit, and managed to let 6 clubs wound make for some ridiculous score. All completely normal stuff, but I was just really enjoying watching it. Well,
with an over trick as well. And do you know what the thing I hated the most about this hand was? Is that at trick 1, the player could claim 13 tricks. Like you can actually see 13, you can claim 13. Like you don't need trumps to break, you don't need anything like whatsoever. You can draw every trump from the opponents and then still make your 13 tricks. And he played it out to trick 13. He played every single card.
I like his play. Just get the opponents right on edge.
And he made sure to throw away hearts was the suit I could have led, and that was my ace third to beat the contract. And he every time he played a heart from his hand, he'd always put it down on the table with a little bit of definition as well, that's going away. That's going away.
Oh, yeah. That's awful.
Just like the semi-final. But stuff like that, I really enjoyed. Because there was a bit of emotion attached to it. I felt something. I felt like it was good Viewgraph, and I think it needs more of that sort of thing. Not us losing, but just more emotion. With interesting hands and But I get your point that you want good commentating. You want some banter and some stories along with some analysis, but not just completely dry, boring stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same with bulletin writing as well. You can have some truly amazing bulletin writers who come up with lots of funny stuff, and they have, creating a culture of people enjoying laughing about things. Not laughing about people being idiots or whatever, but actually being hey, we're actually, we're going to celebrate some funny stuff, some good stuff, some all sorts of things, rather than just being let's write up this, double squeeze or whatever that, yada, yada, yada. No one actually made this play, but we just noticed it on Double Dummy Solver and it looks really cool, so we'll write it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we might move on to the next topic we're going to talk about, which is being tempoed, or what do you do when you're playing against opponents that are controlling the tempo or playing really fast and putting you out of your game because usually they're playing too fast, but sometimes people are playing extraordinarily slowly. What do you do to maintain focus and not rush yourself and that sort of stuff, Max?
One of the things I find, well, obviously thinking faster than your opponents is the simple answer, but it's not always that simple. So I tend to find that at the start of the hand, you can normally like don't move on from trick one until you're ready to. Like if you want to think about something, count out the points in Declarer's hand or something like that. You can just leave your card face up from trick one and just take your time, think out the hand through. And as a defender sitting after Declarer as well, you can, it doesn't really matter what side you're sitting on, but you can take as much time there as you'd like without your opponents really getting a lot of inferences from your hand. Obviously, they can pick up some. But you don't want to like all of a sudden like lead to trick one and then Declarer wins at the speed of light and then plays like a club and it goes around to Declarer's king and you're sitting there with the ace and you just don't know whether to duck or not. It's just too hard. So you need to be thinking about what's happening. So like when I lead a card and dummy comes down and I know the trick's going to get one in dummy, for instance, I'm going to try and count out Declarer's approximate pattern, their points, all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I'm thinking if Declarer plays like a heart to their queen or something, and I've got like the king of hearts, or I've got like a heart on it, am I going to duck this or not?
Yeah.
And most of the time, I've already decided what suits I will and won't duck in before Declarer plays that card off the table. Sometimes I haven't. Sometimes you need to really stop and think it through. But that's why you take your time at trick one to make sure you get these positions right. And so it's not just at trick one you can get tempoed. Sometimes people are just playing really quickly and you feel obliged to play quickly as well, but it's not the case. If you want to take 2 seconds before you play each card, just take like a little breath in or something, then play a card, and then wait until it comes back to you, take a breath in again, and then play a card, and just slow yourself down, because if one of your opponents is playing that quickly, you're not really going to run into time constraints by the end of the match. Well, you shouldn't run into time constraints by the end of the match. So just slow yourself down, and it's not just a thing you should do for yourself, but it's also something you should do for your partner as well. So if you feel like your partner's being rushed as well, take a breath, and you might have nothing to think about in this breath or whatever, but if you're taking a breath every card throughout the hand, it's completely fine, or at every card throughout the match you can take a breath, it's completely fine. Your tempo is not changing from hand to hand.
Yeah.
And all that's doing is it's just giving partner an extra couple of seconds throughout the match to think at various points.
Yeah.
Obviously, what you can't do. Oh, sorry. Obviously, what you can't.
What are you saying, Nick?
You're in, Nick. Go.
Oh, I meant sorry for interrupting you and all that. No, I was a little excited about some of those points you made. Let's say that if you guys have played against Jimmy Wallace or Andrew Merrill or these sorts of guys, that they're big personalities. They're good players. They play very, very quickly. And the thing is, whenever everyone's had experience playing against these guys, guys who don't even take 10 seconds to look at dummy. Dummy comes down, they say small, and you're in the driver's seat. The thing is, when all four players try to play at that pace, at least one of them is not going to be comfortable. They'll try. This is a big problem. You see people trying to keep up, and they're not comfortable, and they make mistakes. And as you said, Max, this is very much a partnership thing. You have to, be able to make like, and you slow down for your partner.
Sorry, Nick, you're breaking up. What was that again?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying you do need to slow down for your partner. You need to. You need to be able. I think it helps having a good routine. So when dummy comes down, if I'm third in hand, I'm thinking about, am I putting up an honor for this trick? Am I trying to win this trick, or am I going to give a signal? If I'm going to give a signal, what signal am I going to give? And otherwise, regardless of whether you're the leader or third in hand, you should be working on a few things that you've already decided before the match, before the game, before the tournament, that you're going to do, which is, so for me, what I do is I count points, and then I work out shapes, I count tricks, and then I look at combinations, and the combinations is exactly what Max was talking about. Am I going to win this card? Am I going to duck this? What will I need to do when, they lead the singleton off table and I've got the ace? All these sorts of things, you work. If you've got a routine to solve them, then it does make you not just a lot quicker in these positions, but it makes you a lot more accurate as well, I think, because you're not backtracking all the time, you're not using redundant information, you're not distracting yourself with things that don't really matter, you're just working on very basic principles.
Yeah.
So I think that's good, to build a strong image of the hand in your mind to avoid getting tempoed.
Yeah, my tips on being tempoed, I'm a pretty quick player, so I don't get much of it, but I think it's first thing to realize is it's completely okay to hold up the game. Like, if you just leave your card there and just sit there and think it's fine, if you've got something to think about, take your time. Lots of people feel rushed and feel like just because an opponent sometimes turns over a card and plays the next trick, that you have to do something. I just leave my card up. It's okay, and just go, sorry, can I see those tricks? And just slow it down. That is completely okay. Don't feel pressured to play at that speed. Take your time. If you need to, you just leave your card, you say, sorry, I need to see the last trick, and send them back. And I also am a firm believer of if you think your partner's being rushed, make sure you try and slow up the game and don't play at the pace that everyone else is playing at, just because your partner might be inexperienced or a bit new and might feel like they have to keep up. You know that you're able to slow it up. You don't want to just waste time, so if your partner's doing fine, then that's not an issue. But it's definitely okay just to leave it there for a bit and try and get a consistent tempo that's a bit slower, that gives your partner that extra moment to think about it and things like that. But that's my general ideas on tempo and sort of improving it. But we'll move on to the final topic, which was just we got some emails or some comments that came in. If you've got any emails that you want to get onto Triple Dummy, just email us at bridgevid@gmail.com, or even post notes on YouTube. Anyway, we got a request from Midnight Fox. He said, the best episode yet. He was talking about the last one. Hasn't heard this one yet, I don't think. It was very interesting to hear Nick tell us about the Bermuda Bowl, and I'd very much like to hear Nick talk about some more about the Bermuda Bowl. Maybe show some interesting hands he has played, speak more about the tournament. What was the daily routine? Is everyone living at the same hotel? What is happening when you don't play, and such stories. I saw some of Nick's play that is on YouTube, and I think Nick has played good. Anyway, so yeah, Nick, what was the daily routine over there at the Bermuda Bowl?
Okay, so for us, we were staying about a 5-minute walk away from the venue, a much cheaper place, but very basic. We walked over to the venue and had breakfast every morning. We would meet up with our team. They would kind of, early on in the tournament, they were better about meeting up together and just having a chat and just getting some positive vibes going. I think it is a lot nicer to actually make sure that you see your teammates before you go in for the first session. You just want to feel like they're on your side, that you're on their side as well. So we did try to do that, and I think that's what most teams do. They meet up for, if not breakfast, then certainly half an hour before the session time, just to hang out. And after the first session, we didn't really eat much lunch. The lunch was pretty expensive at the venue, so we normally had some leftover breakfast. I went to the bar, hang out with the guys. That could have been improved on. I think it's important to have something for lunch. You definitely don't want to have a big lunch, because having a big meal between sessions is a poor idea, because you feel bloated and you're not quite sharp enough. But you definitely want some refreshment. You want some energy, maybe some carbs, and just give yourself something to burn through, because you do burn through a lot of energy at the table. And there was a very short gap between the second session and the third session, so it was important that this pair sitting out was around and we score up quickly, work out the lineup, head back in, and you always meet up as a group for score up. If you can, you try to go out for dinner afterwards. We couldn't quite work out the team dinners, unfortunately. That would have been much better, I think. You don't have to always eat together, but I think it's nice to go out as a team, to share, to have some camaraderie and all that. And then we went home basically. So that was our day-to-day routine, pretty basic. As you can tell, no sort of sightseeing.
Yeah.
We did do, if during sets off, we would tend to go swimming, which was really nice. It's good to do some physical exercise when you're in the middle of a big tournament, because you do get kind of, you get sort of stiff necks and backs and stuff. You don't realise how inactive you are physically when you're at a long, intense bridge tournament. So it's good to do something, whether it's swimming or heading to the gym and pumping some iron or riding the bike or hitting the treadmill. Those things are all very good.
You said that you were staying 5 minutes away. Who was with you? Was it your whole team or just you and Glenn? Or
me and Glenn and our girlfriends.
fiance?
Fiance, that's right. That's not counting things multiply, by the way. Gayo came to join us afterwards as well. Most of the New Zealand entourage stayed at the venue. It was quite expensive, however, and a few of them stayed quite a way away, sort of 20 minutes by a cab or tuk-tuk, which is, I think, too much. I think it's just way too much pressure to put on yourself to get into sets so much earlier than you have to be in, and trying to get home at the end of a long day. It's I wouldn't do that, but they enjoyed it. So, and they played for New Zealand women's team for 40 years. So to each his or her own.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few people staying at certainly nicer hotels than ours. Also about a 5-minute walk away. The Park Hyatt was a very nice venue. And quite a bit cheaper than the Grand Chola. So, in summary, I'm not sure if all the teams stayed together. I would guess that most teams stayed together.
Yeah.
New Zealand was a little different in that regard. New Zealand often is, because we're pretty amateur. We don't have the funding levels, so everyone tries to do what they can manage. And then we'll see how it happens, which is not ideal. It's better to, you don't want to be tripping all over each other, but it's nice if you can go hang out with different people and on your team, and make sure that you feel like there's not, there aren't people who are, feeling excluded from the team.
Yeah. Was there some tournaments have just a general bar area where most of the players flock to after the bridge? Was there sort of one general hangout area there, or after the thing were all the different teams going separate ways?
There were a couple of hangout areas. One of the bars and the cigar room accompanying it was pretty common. Was kind of a common room. Not everyone went there though. Again, I think the prohibitive costs meant that people tended to hang out by themselves or go out together as a group, which I think is, especially since there were very few eateries nearby, you'd often get teams jumping in a cab or a couple of tuk-tuks and going off to dinner by themselves. And, that's all completely fine. It's just a shame. It's a shame that the venue was in such a place where there was no local eats. If you didn't want to eat at the venue, because it was expensive, then you had to take not a really long cab ride or tuk-tuk ride, but you had to get out of the general area, go for about 10 minutes, and then find somewhere to eat. So you didn't have the same levels of camaraderie and between team hangs as you do for the youth events, for instance, which are normally in one area with lots of food around, if not food provided by the hosting venue. So yeah, that was a little bit disappointing because it is nice to spend time with these other international guys. Most of them are really approachable. Guys like Gavin Walpert and the Hackett's and the Norwegian guys, all the Norwegians. It's you wouldn't really know unless you had the opportunity to meet up with them.
Yeah.
And in India, it felt like you had to make those opportunities rather than being able to go somewhere where you knew people would be hanging out and have some fun. So it was a bit of a shame, a bit of a downside to the event, I think.
All right. Anyway, we might wrap it up there. Thanks all for watching, and
Cool.
thanks Max for joining us.
Absolutely, thanks, dude.
We'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.
All right, catch you later, guys.